My girlfriend posted, "Toxic trait. Dating a man who peaked in high school with a photo of my old football jersey." I commented, "Toxic trait. Dating someone you're embarrassed by." Then I packed her things and left them on her sister's porch. 28M, work as a logistics coordinator, which is basically a fancy way of saying I work long hours managing shipping routes. It's demanding, but it pays well enough that I was able to buy a modest 3-bedroom house in a quiet suburban neighborhood a few years back. I'm a pretty low-key guy. I like keeping my house in order, hitting the gym, and just enjoying some peace and quiet after a long day. My girlfriend, 26F, moved in with me about 8 months before this whole nightmare started. We had been dating for a little over 2 years at that point. She worked in digital marketing, which meant she was absolutely obsessed with social media, curating her aesthetic and making sure her life looked perfectly luxurious to her followers online. When she moved in, our arrangement was simple. I covered the mortgage and the main utilities, and she paid for groceries, her own car note, and part of the internet bill. For the first few months, it actually worked out fine. But then she started making these little passive-aggressive comments. She complained that my house was too suburban and boring. She was constantly comparing our lives to these highly edited, wealthy influencers she followed. She wanted luxury vacations we definitely couldn't afford, and designer furniture that didn't even fit the vibe of the house. I usually just brushed it off, thinking she was just venting. That was a massive mistake on my part. The real breaking point happened on a random Tuesday evening. I was sitting at my desk in my home office, finishing up some work, when my phone buzzed. A mutual friend had sent me a screenshot of my girlfriend's latest social media post with just a question mark. I opened the picture, and my stomach instantly dropped. It was a photo of my old high school football jersey, laid out on our living room rug. Now, I need to be completely clear here. I am not one of those guys who peaked in high school. I never talk about those days, and I definitely don't wear my old Letterman jacket. That jersey was washed, folded, and buried at the very bottom of a plastic storage bin labeled Old Keepsakes in the darkest corner of my unfinished basement. I hadn't even looked at it in 5 years. She had to have intentionally gone down into the basement, dug through heavy storage bins, unpacked the jersey, and laid it out specifically to take this picture. The caption underneath read, "Toxic trait. Dating a man who peaked in high school. Wish I had someone who was focused on the future instead of holding on to past glory." I just stared at the screen. The disrespect was one thing, but the calculated, performative nature of it was what really got to me. She went out her way to dig up an old shirt just to invent a completely fake narrative for her followers, framing me as some pathetic loser, so she could get sympathy and validation from strangers. I didn't yell. I didn't storm out of my office to confront her. I just calmly opened the app, went to her public post, and typed a single comment. "Toxic trait. Dating someone you're embarrassed by." I hit send. Then I walked straight into our shared bedroom, grabbed 3 heavy-duty black trash bags in the kitchen, and opened her closet. I systematically tossed her everyday clothes, her shoes, her expensive makeup bags, and her jackets into the bags. I didn't take everything, just enough so she would immediately understand that things had fundamentally changed. I loaded the bags into my truck, drove 15 minutes across town to her sister's apartment, carried them up the stairs, set them neatly on the porch, and drove back home. Her sister and I always had a decent relationship. She was way more grounded than my girlfriend. I was barely pulling into my driveway when my phone rang, and her sister's name popped up. I answered, fully expecting to get chewed out. There was a heavy pause on the line, and then her sister just sighed and said, "Honestly, fair enough." I saw the post, and I saw your comment. I assumed these bags are a problem now. I told her they were, and that I was completely done with the relationship. Then her sister's tone shifted into something incredibly serious. She told me to listen carefully. She said the post was nasty, but my girlfriend wasn't just posting to be mean. She was building a specific narrative. Her sister told me I needed to pull my credit report right that second. She explained that my girlfriend had been complaining for weeks about being broke, but suddenly just bought a $2,000 designer handbag and booked a solo weekend trip to Miami. She had bragged to her sister about finally figuring out how to fund her escape plan from my boring life. Her sister thought she took out a personal loan, but seeing the post framing me as an irresponsible loser made it all click. She hung up, and I instantly went into panic mode. I locked the front door, ran to my office, and pulled my full credit report online. Right there, glaring at me on the screen, was a brand new high-limit credit card opened in my name exactly 45 days ago. The balance was almost $15,000. The card was completely maxed out. The address was my house, but the email attached was a fake variation of my name. The scale of the betrayal actually made me dizzy. She didn't just disrespect me online. She had stolen my social security number from my physical tax documents in my desk, opened a massive line of credit, intercepted the car in the mail before I got home from work, and spent $15,000 in 6 weeks, all while publicly painting me as a financial and emotional anchor. She was setting it up so that when she skipped town, everyone would think I was the one who blew the money. I went into total survival mode. I called the credit card company's fraud department, froze the account, and flagged it for stolen identity. I explicitly told them I knew who did it and that I would be filing a police report. I also made sure they preserved the IP address logs from when the online application was submitted. Right as I hung up, the front door unlocked. My girlfriend stormed inside, her face bright red with fury. She marched right to my office doorway and started screaming at me, demanding to know why I dumped her clothes on her sister's porch like a stray dog over a joke. She called me fragile and demanded I apologize and bring her stuff back. I just looked at her. The sheer entitlement was almost unbelievable. She honestly thought she held all the power. I kept my voice dead level and told her the trash bags were a courtesy and that she had exactly 30 days to remove the rest of her belongings from my property. She let out this harsh, theatrical laugh and told me I couldn't kick her out. She claimed she had tenant rights, got her mail there, and wasn't going anywhere just because I couldn't take an internet joke. I didn't argue. I opened my desk drawer, pulled out a blank sheet of paper, and quickly wrote out a formal legal 30-day notice to vacate the premises. I signed it, dated it, and slid it across the desk. She snatched it, ripped it to shreds, dropped the pieces on the floor, and told me I was going to be miserable until I learned how to treat her right. Then she slammed the guest bedroom door, so hard the walls shook. The next morning, I drove straight to the police precinct and filed a massive report for identity theft and fraud. I gave him the credit card numbers, the timeline, and my girlfriend's full legal name. The detective took it very seriously because identity theft over $10,000 is a major felony in my state. He told me he was officially opening an investigation and subpoenaing the digital records from the credit card company. When I got home, the house was a disaster. She had left every kitchen cabinet open, dumped coffee grounds in the sink, and was blasting the living room TV at maximum volume while aggressively texting on the couch. I completely ignored her. I cleaned up the mess, made dinner, and went to my office. Entitled people thrive on conflict, and when you deny them the reaction they want, they absolutely lose their minds. 2 days later, while she was out to lunch with her friends, I had a professional security company discreetly install high-definition cameras in the kitchen, the living room, and pointing at the front door. State law allows recording in common areas of a shared home. I didn't tell her about them. I needed an undeniable record of her behavior. For 2 weeks, she tested every boundary. She would stand outside my office loudly calling me abusive and controlling on the phone. She even started bringing some new guy over while I was working. They'd drink my expensive whiskey and laugh loudly on my couch. I never confronted them. I just sat in my office, collected the video footage, and let the 30-day clock tick down. By day 22, she realized I wasn't going to break. I wasn't going to yell, and I wasn't going to give her a reason to call the cops for a domestic dispute. She also realized the eviction notice was real, and she was running out of time. So she resorted to the dirtiest trick possible. It was a Friday night. I was working in my office. I heard her walk out the guest room, stomp down the hallway, and then I heard a loud, heavy thud. I didn't move. I opened the camera app on my phone. I watched the live feed as she stood in the hallway, looking at her own shoulder, where a red mark was forming from intentionally slamming herself into the sharp corner of the drywall. Then she picked up her phone, dialed 911, and started hysterically crying. She told the dispatcher that her boyfriend just snapped, threw her against the wall, and that she was locked in the guest room terrified for her life. My heart was pounding so hard it hurt. She was completely willing to send me to jail on fake domestic violence charges just to get me removed from my own house. I immediately downloaded the video clip to my phone and backed it up to the cloud. Then I just waited. 10 minutes later, the police were pounding on my front door. I opened it to find two officers looking very tense. They ordered me to step outside, and I complied instantly, keeping my hands visible. I calmly told them that my soon-to-be ex-girlfriend just made a false call, that I hadn't touched her, and that she was retaliating against a legal eviction notice. One officer stayed with me while the other went inside. A few minutes later, he walked out with my girlfriend. She was clutching her shoulder, crying fake tears, and looking at me with this mix of fear and triumph. The officer coldly stated that she had a visible contusion and alleged I forcefully shoved her. Very slowly, I pulled my phone out and told the officers I had security cameras in the common areas. I offered to show them the video from 15 minutes ago of her deliberately slamming her own shoulder into the wall and making the fake call. Her fake crying stopped instantly. She went totally rigid and her face turned ghost white. She started stammering, screaming that I illegally recorded her and violated her privacy. The older officer took my phone, watched the crisp video twice, and handed it back. He turned to my girlfriend, and his expression was absolutely lethal. He told her that filing a false police report and misusing the 911 system were crimes, and attempting to have an innocent person arrested was abhorrent. She started desperately backpedaling, claiming she was scared and that I was emotionally abusive. The officer cut her off. He told her to pack a bag because she was leaving the residence immediately. She shrieked that she had tenant rights and couldn't be evicted. The officer clarified that he wasn't evicting her, but he was separating us because she was a severe liability. He told her she could either leave voluntarily right now to cool down, or he would arrest her in my hallway for the false report. Defeated and shaking with rage, she packed a duffel bag, marched out to her car, and sped off. The officers gave me an incident report number and left. I finally breathed, but I knew she wouldn't just walk away. The next morning, I hired a ruthless civil litigation attorney. I laid out the whole timeline, the fraud, and the fake police call. My lawyer took notes and smiled this sharp, predatory smile. He told me the false report was bad, but the identity theft was the absolute kill shot. The police had updated me that the credit card company complied with the subpoena. The IP address matched my home internet during hours I was at the office, and the digital signature for the card delivery perfectly matched her handwriting. My lawyer told me to cease all communication and let her dig her own grave. 3 days before the eviction expired, my HR manager at work called me in. She looked incredibly uncomfortable and told me a woman claiming to be my partner called a corporate ethics line. She alleged I was stealing office equipment and physically threatening her, demanding I be fired immediately. I didn't even blink. I opened my briefcase, pulled out a thick folder, and handed it to my manager. It contained the police report about the fake 911 call with the officer's notes about the video footage, plus the formal case number for the open felony identity theft investigation against her. I explained she was retaliating against an eviction. My manager read the papers, visibly relaxed, and told me the internal complaint was entirely closed. She failed to ruin my career because I came prepared. The 30 days finally expired. Because she hadn't moved her furniture out, my lawyer filed for an unlawful detainer in civil court to get a judge to order a physical sheriff lockout. The hearing was set for 2 weeks later. I honestly thought she would try to delay it, but her entitlement blinded her to reality. She actually showed up to the courthouse playing the victim, wearing a modest dress and carrying that stolen designer handbag. She didn't even bring a lawyer. When we approached the bench, she immediately started crying to the judge, claiming I was abusive, financially isolated her, and that she had nowhere to go. The judge looked at my lawyer for a response. My lawyer smoothly opened his massive evidence binder. He told the judge her claims were categorically false and that she was currently the target of an active felony investigation for grand larceny against me. She scoffed loudly and called it a lie. My lawyer ignored her and handed the judge a sworn affidavit from a financial crimes detective confirming the IP address and signature evidence for $15,000 in stolen credit. Her jaw literally dropped. The smug confidence vanished. Then, my lawyer handed over the police report regarding her fake domestic violence 911 call, explaining she was a severe legal liability and danger to my safety. The judge read the reports, scowled, and looked right at her. He sternly asked if she was currently under investigation for felony identity theft against me. She started stuttering in genuine panic, realizing her entire narrative had just collapsed in a court of law. The judge slammed his gavel, immediately granted the eviction, and ordered her to vacate the premises entirely, stating law enforcement would conduct a physical lockout in 48 hours. She stumbled back, looked at me with pure terror, and hissed that I ruined her life. I just quietly replied that I checked my credit report. We turned and walked out of the courtroom. As we pushed through the heavy wooden doors into the main hallway, my lawyer checked his watch. Standing right there in the hallway were two uniformed officers and a plainclothes financial crimes detective. My ex walked out a few seconds behind us. The detective stepped right into her path, flashed his badge, and told her they had a warrant for her arrest. She froze, dropped her designer bag on the marble floor, and started hyperventilating. The detective calmly informed her she was being arrested for felony identity theft, wire fraud, and filing a false police report. He told her to put her hands behind her back. She absolutely lost her mind, screaming, crying, and begging me to tell him it was a misunderstanding. She spent months trying to destroy my life, steal my money, and frame me for a crime, and she still expected me to save her. I didn't say a word as I handcuffed her and marched her to the elevators. 2 days later, her sister rented a truck and came to get her stuff. She told me my ex's bail was set at $50,000, and their parents refused to pay it after seeing the evidence. The credit card company was pressing hard charges, and she was facing real prison time. Her sister actually apologized to me for everything I was dragged through. I sold the house a few months later for a massive profit and bought a beautiful, quiet piece of property out near the woods. My ex ended up taking a plea deal. She served 6 months in county jail, got 5 years of strict probation, and has to pay back every single penny of that $15,000 in mandatory monthly restitution. Because she's a convicted felon for a financial crime, she was permanently blacklisted from her career field. She now works a drive-through window and lives in her parents' unfinished basement. She tried to publicly humiliate me for supposedly peaking in high school, all while trying to rob me blind to fund her fake aesthetic. But in the end, I kept my house, my career, and my peace, while she completely destroyed her own future. If you love hearing about absolute toxic entitlement getting dismantled by cold, hard legal facts, do me a huge favor and smash that subscribe button. I guarantee I got plenty more wild, unfiltered stories just like this one coming up next.